Hi all. All the names in this story have been changed due to privacy matters. It was a typical Friday evening when I found myself in the middle of a family gathering. My cousin Alice had just turned 21 and her parents had thrown her a party at their house. As usual, the whole family was there, including my aunt, uncle, and a bunch of cousins I hadn't seen in a while. Now, let me tell you a bit about myself. My name is Max. I'm 25 years old and I'm a software engineer. I'm a bit of a smart ass, and I love to poke fun at people who take themselves too seriously, but I'm also fiercely loyal to my family and I'll do whatever it takes to protect them. Anyway, back to the party. I was sitting on the couch, nursing a beer, when my cousin David walked in. David is a year younger than me, and he's always been a bit of a troublemaker. He had a smug grin on his face, and I knew he was up to something. "Hey, Max," he said, plopping down next to me. "Have you met my new girlfriend, Abella?" I turned to see a tall, blonde girl with a sour expression standing behind him. "No, I haven't," I said. "Nice to meet you, Abella." Abella barely acknowledged me and started fussing with her hair. "David, why don't we go get some drinks?" she said, pulling him up from the couch. I watched them go, wondering what David was up to. He had always been the type to push people's buttons, and I had a feeling Abella was part of his latest scheme. Sure enough, a few minutes later, David came back with a mischievous glint in his eye. "Hey, Max," he said, "I bet you can't get Abella to say, 'please.'" I raised an eyebrow. "What are you talking about? You know, like when you're ordering food or something. Just don't say please and see if she'll do it." I shook my head. "That's dumb. Why would I do that?" "Come on, Max. It'll be fun," David said, elbowing me. "Besides, I'll give you $20 if you can do it." I considered for a moment. $20 wasn't a lot of money, but it was still something, and I had a feeling that David was up to something. "Fine, I'll do it." David grinned and nudged Abella towards me. "Go ahead, Max. Order us some pizza." I rolled my eyes and picked up the phone. "Okay, what do you guys want?" David rattled off a list of toppings, and I repeated them to the person on the other end of the line. When it came time to pay, I deliberately left out the word please. The person on the other end of the line hesitated for a moment before saying, "I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. Could you please repeat it?" I grinned and repeated the order, still leaving out the magic word. When I hung up, David and Abella were staring at me expectantly. "Well," David said, "did she say please?" I shook my head. "Nope, but I don't see what the big deal is." Abella scowled. "Excuse me, but you didn't say please either." I shrugged. "I didn't want to." Abella crossed her arms. "Well, I'm not going to say it if you don't." I rolled my eyes. "Fine, whatever. It's just Abella's stubbornness annoyed me, but I didn't say anything else." The pizza arrived a few minutes later and we all sat down to eat. As we were digging in, David leaned over to me. "So, did you notice anything weird when you ordered the pizza?" I frowned. "No, why?" "Look at the box," David said, pointing to the pizza box on the table. I picked it up and examined it. At first, everything seemed normal, but then I noticed something written in small print at the bottom of the box. "By ordering this pizza, you agree to perform a dance in public within 24 hours. Failure to comply will result in a $100 penalty." I stared at the box in disbelief. "What the hell is this?" David snickered. "It's a prank, man. Abella and I set it up." I was livid. I had fallen right into their trap, but I wasn't going to let them get away with it. The next day, I got a text message from David. It was a video of him and Abella dancing in the middle of a crowded park. "Your turn," he wrote. I wasn't about to dance in public like some kind of idiot, but I also didn't want to give them the satisfaction of winning. So I came up with a plan. I put on my most ridiculous outfit, a pair of bright orange shorts, a neon green t-shirt, and a pair of sunglasses. Then I drove to the park where David and Abella had danced and started blasting music from my car stereo. People started to gather around, curious about what was going on. I got out of the car and started doing the silliest dance I could think of, the chicken dance. At first, people were just staring at me, wondering what the hell I was doing. But then something amazing happened. A little girl, maybe 6 or 7 years old, came up to me and started doing the chicken dance too. Soon, more and more people joined in. Kids, parents, grandparents, everyone was doing the chicken dance. It was chaos, but it was also the most fun I had had in ages. After a few minutes, I stopped the music and thanked everyone for joining in. Then I got back in my car and drove away, feeling a sense of satisfaction that I hadn't felt in a long time. A few hours later, David called me. "Hey man, what the hell was that?" I grinned. "Just some malicious compliance, David. You should have known better than to mess with me." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. "Well played, Max," David said finally. "Well played." I could hear Abella in the background, grumbling about the whole thing. But I didn't care. I had taught them a lesson, and I had done it in the most ridiculous way possible. I'm Jake, a 28-year-old guy who has always been a bit of a rebel. I never liked being told what to do, and I always tried to find ways to bend the rules. That's probably why I ended up here looking for stories about people who stick it to the man. But little did I know that I would soon become the star of my own malicious compliance story. It all started when my friend Emily invited me to her birthday party. Emily is a great friend of mine, but she can be a bit bossy sometimes. She told me that the party theme was 50s sock hop and that everyone had to dress up in retro outfits. Now, I don't really like dressing up in costumes, but I didn't want to disappoint Emily. So I went to the thrift store and bought a cheap leather jacket and some jeans. I thought I looked pretty cool, but apparently Emily didn't agree. "You can't wear jeans to a sock hop, Jake," she said, rolling her eyes. "You have to wear a poodle skirt or a Letterman jacket or something." I shrugged. "Sorry, I'm not really into the whole costume thing. Plus, I think I look pretty badass in this jacket." Emily sighed. "Fine, whatever. But you're going to regret it when you see everyone else's outfits." I didn't really care about what other people were wearing, but Emily seemed to be obsessed with it. I guess that's just how she is. The party was at a local diner that had been decorated to look like a 1950s soda shop. There were balloons and streamers everywhere, and the jukebox was playing oldies music. Emily was dressed in a pink poodle skirt and a white blouse, and all of her friends were wearing similar outfits. They looked like they had stepped out of a time machine. I didn't really fit in, but I didn't mind. I grabbed a milkshake and sat down at a booth by myself. That's when I noticed a guy staring at me from across the room. He was about my age, maybe a little older, and he had a smug look on his face. I didn't like the way he was looking at me, so I glared back at him. He smirked and walked over to my table. "What's up, greaser?" he said, trying to sound tough. I rolled my eyes. "What do you want?" "I just wanted to tell you that you look like a tool in that jacket," he said, laughing. "Are you trying to impress someone or something?" I gritted my teeth. I didn't like this guy's attitude, but I didn't want to start a fight either. "No, I just like the jacket. Is there a problem?" The guy shrugged. "No problem. Just thought I'd give you some friendly advice." I could tell he was being sarcastic, but I didn't say anything. I just wanted him to leave me alone, but he didn't. He kept hanging around, making snarky comments and trying to get a rise out of me. I tried to ignore him, but he was really starting to get on my nerves. That's when Emily came over, looking concerned. "Is everything okay, Jake?" I sighed. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just dealing with this guy." The guy sneered. "Oh, is this your girlfriend? She's cute. Too bad she's with a loser like you." That was it. I had had enough. I stood up and faced him. "Listen, man," the guy took a step back, looking a bit surprised that I had finally stood up to him. I could see the fear in his eyes, but he tried to hide it with a smirk. "What? Are you going to hit me?" he taunted. I resisted the urge to punch him in the face. Instead, I decided to use my words to get back at him. "No, I'm not going to hit you, but I am going to teach you a lesson." The guy laughed. "Yeah, right. What are you going to do? Give me a stern talking to." I didn't say anything. Instead, I walked over to the jukebox and put on a song. It was Jailhouse Rock by Elvis Presley, one of my favorites. I started to dance, moving my hips and swinging my arms. At first, the guy just stood there looking confused, but then a few other people joined in, clapping and dancing along with me. Soon, The whole diner was filled with people dancing to the music. The guy who had been bothering me looked embarrassed, but he tried to play it cool by dancing awkwardly. I kept dancing, feeling the beat of the music and the energy of the crowd. I felt alive, like I was finally able to express myself in a way that I couldn't with words. When the song ended, everyone clapped and cheered. I felt a sense of pride, knowing that I had turned the tables on the guy who had been trying to bully me. "Looks like you're not the only one who likes my jacket," I said to him, smirking. The guy didn't say anything. He just walked away, looking defeated. Emily came over and hugged me. "That was amazing, Jake. I had no idea you could dance like that." I shrugged. "It's just something I learned from my dad. He used to be a professional dancer." Emily looked surprised. "I never knew that. You should show me some more moves sometime." I smiled. "Sure, I'd love to." From that day on, I became known as the guy who could dance. Whenever there was a party or a social gathering, people would ask me to show them some moves. I didn't mind, though. I had found a new way to express myself, and it felt great. As for the guy who had tried to bully me, I never saw him again. But I heard from Emily that he had started to avoid me, afraid that I might embarrass him again. I guess you could say that I taught him a tough lesson without ever throwing a punch. I never thought I'd end up on Our Malicious Compliance, but here I am, telling the story of how I got revenge on a couple of entitled brats who thought they could take advantage of me. My name is Emily. I'm 26 years old, and I work at a coffee shop in downtown Seattle. I'm a pretty easygoing person, but I don't take kindly to people treating me like a doormat. It all started on a rainy Tuesday morning, just like any other day. I was working the early shift, and the shop was pretty quiet. That's when they walked in two teenage girls, both dressed in designer clothes and looking like they owned the world. They didn't even bother to say hello, just strutted up to the counter like they owned the place. "2 caramel macchiatos, extra hot," the taller one said, snapping her gum and tossing her long blonde hair over her shoulder. "Sure thing," I said, punching in the order on the register. "That'll be $9.50. The girls exchanged a look and then burst out laughing. $9.50? Are you kidding me?" the shorter one said, shaking her head. "We can get these drinks for way cheaper at Starbucks." I raised an eyebrow. "Well, this isn't Starbucks. And if you want a cheaper drink, you can go there instead." The girls didn't like that answer. They started complaining loudly about how rude I was, how terrible the coffee was, how they were going to leave a bad review on Yelp. I tried to ignore them and focus on making their drinks, but they kept getting louder and more obnoxious. Finally, I had enough. I handed them their cups and said, "Here you go, ladies. 2 extra hot caramel macchiatos, just like you ordered, and here's your change." I held out 2 pennies. The girls stared at the pennies in disbelief. "What is this?" the taller one said. "Your change," I said sweetly. $9.50 minus $9.48. Enjoy your drinks." The girls stormed out of the shop, still grumbling and muttering under their breath. But I didn't care. I felt like I had won a small victory over their entitled attitudes. As it turned out, the girls were regulars at our shop. They came in every morning and ordered the same thing, always with a rude attitude and a snide comment about the price. But after that day, they stopped coming, and that's when I knew that my little act of malicious compliance had worked. But let me back up a bit and explain why I was so fed up with entitled customers in the first place. You see, I've been working at this coffee shop for 3 years now, ever since I graduated from college with a degree in English literature. I had big dreams of becoming a writer, but as it turns out, the job market for writers isn't exactly booming, so I took a job as a barista, thinking it would be a temporary thing. But the longer I worked there, the more I realized that this was my calling. I loved the smell of coffee in the morning, the sound of the milk frothing, the way the regular customers would smile and wave when they walked in. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was honest work, and I took pride in doing it well. But there were always a few customers who seemed to think that just because they were paying for a cup of coffee, they were entitled to treat me like dirt. They would snap their fingers at me, wave their hands impatiently, and generally act like I was their personal servant. It was frustrating, to say the least, but I tried my best to keep my cool and not let their bad attitudes get to me. That is, until the day the two entitled girls came in and tried to bargain down the price of their drinks. That was the last straw. I had had enough of customers thinking they could treat me however they pleased just because I was behind a counter. So when I handed them their change in the form of 2 pennies, I felt a sense of satisfaction that I hadn't felt in a long time. It was a small act of rebellion, but it felt good to stand up for myself in my own small way. Of course, I didn't expect the girls to never come back to the shop. I figured they would complain to their friends, leave a bad review on Yelp, and generally try to make my life miserable. But to my surprise, nothing happened. The girls never came back, and no negative reviews appeared online. It wasn't until a few weeks later that I found out why. One of my regular customers, an older gentleman named Frank, came up to me one morning with a mischievous glint in his eye. "Hey, Emily," he said. "I heard about what you did to those entitled girls a few weeks ago. Good for you, standing up for yourself like that." I blushed a little. "Thanks, Frank. It wasn't a big deal, really." "Oh, but it was," he said. "Those girls are friends with my granddaughter, and let me tell you, they were not happy about what you did. But here's the thing. My granddaughter is a bit of a troublemaker herself, and she decided to teach those girls a lesson." He went on to explain that his granddaughter had convinced the girls to start going to Starbucks instead of our coffee shop, telling them that the drinks were better and the prices were cheaper. But what the girls didn't know was that Frank's granddaughter worked at that Starbucks, and she had been giving them decaf instead of regular coffee for weeks. The girls were complaining about how weak the coffee was, how it wasn't giving them the kick they needed, Frank said, chuckling. And my granddaughter was just sitting there, smiling to herself and pouring decaf into their cups. I couldn't help but laugh. "That's amazing, Frank. Your granddaughter is a genius." Frank grinned. "She gets it from me, I guess. But seriously, Emily, you should be proud of yourself. You stood up for yourself and didn't let those entitled brats push you around. That's a rare quality these days." I thanked Frank for his kind words and went back to making coffee, feeling a renewed sense of pride in my job. It wasn't just about making lattes and cappuccinos. It was about standing up for myself and refusing to be treated like a doormat. And who knows, maybe one day I'll write a book about my experiences as a barista. I think it would make for some pretty entertaining reading. But for now, I'm happy to just keep making coffee and serving my customers with a smile. And if any entitled customers try to push me around, I'll be ready with my 2 pennies and a smirk.